So how can a poet's words become a nation's memory? A homeland that you can't just demolish. Today, we're diving into the life and work of Mahmoud Darwish, a poet who, according to one major study, literally constructed an entire nation using language itself.
Darwish himself really captured the essence of his whole life's theme with these powerful words back in 2004. A person can only be born in one place. However, he may die several times elsewhere, in the exiles and prisons. It's a quote that just perfectly sets the stage for a story about home, about exile, and about the sheer will to survive.
And this really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today. How can poetry actually become a homeland? It's a huge idea, right? But we're about to unpack how one man made it his reality.
To really get the answer, we have to go back, way back. We have to understand the world that shaped him. And it all starts with a startling question he asked when he was just a kid.
Just look at this timeline. You can see just how fast his entire world was turned upside down. He's born in 1941 in a Palestinian village called Al-Burwa. But then, in 1948, during the event Palestinians call the Nakba, his village was demolished, gone. His family fled, and just like that, they were refugees. A year later, they managed to sneak back, but the reality they returned to was completely and utterly different.
But coming back, well, it wasn't a happy ending. Not even close. Instead, it plunged his family into this totally bizarre legal paradox. He became what was known as a present-absent alien. So what does that even mean? The term itself sounds like something out of a surrealist novel. It was a legal term from the Israeli government. See, because Darwish's family had fled during the fighting, they weren't there for the official census. So even though they were physically present in the new state of Israel, legally, they were considered absent from their own homes. Think about that. You're a citizen, but you're also an alien, and you have no right to your own land.
And if you want to feel the human cost of that legal status, you just have to read his poetry. They threw him out of every port and took away his young beloved. And then they said, "You're a refugee." Can you imagine being told you're a refugee in the exact same place you were born?
It was exactly that profound sense of injustice that really ignited Darwish's life's work. All of that personal trauma was channeled right into his poetry, and it became this incredibly powerful form of resistance.
And get this, his life as a resistance poet started shockingly early. How old do you think he was? Just 9 years old. 9.
At a school event, he gets up and recites a poem he wrote himself, and it's addressed directly to an Israeli classmate. The words are so simple, but they're just devastatingly direct. You have a house while I have none. You have celebrations while I have none. Why can't we play together?
The reaction wasn't, a teacher sitting them down for a chat. No. The consequence was an interrogation by the Israeli military governor. And that, Darwish later said, that was the moment he truly understood the power his words could have.
And you can see how that one early encounter just set the course for his entire young adult life. He joined the Israeli Communist Party, he edited its Arabic newspaper, and he was arrested again and again for his poems and for his politics. From 1961 to 69, he was constantly in and out of prison and house arrest.
But you just can't silence a voice like that. Eventually, Darwish decided to leave, and that's when his local struggle really transformed into an international cause. He became, for many, the global voice of exile.
In 1970, he explained why he left. And his words, man, they show someone who has just reached their breaking point. He said, "My ability to be patient is now exhausted. I no longer belong to a people that asks for mercy, but to a people that fights." And with that, he left, starting a life in exile that would last for decades.
And what's incredible is that in exile, his influence didn't fade, it exploded. He went from being a national poet to a true international symbol. He became an editor for major publications, a member of the PLO's executive committee, and he even co-founded the International Parliament of Writers with absolute literary giants. His struggle was now being seen as part of a universal human story.
I think this tribute from fellow poet Naomi Shihab Nye just captures his stature perfectly. She called him the essential breath of the Palestinian people, the eloquent witness of exile and belonging. He wasn't just writing poems anymore. He was articulating the very experience of an entire nation for the whole world to hear.
So all of this, the displacement, the resistance, the exile, it all leads us back to his ultimate act of resistance and the central idea of our story today.
creating a homeland that is made entirely of words.
So here's the core argument from the study we're looking at. It argues that in a time when Palestinian identity was being physically and politically wiped off the map, Darwish's work provided the intellectual force to resist that complete erasure.
So you might be asking, okay, but how do you do that? How do you build a homeland out of language? Well, you can kind of break it down into 4 steps. First, you preserve historical memory, fighting against its erasure. Second, you chronicle the collective experience of exile and loss. Third, you give a voice to a national identity that's under threat. And finally, you build something intangible, a homeland of words that no one can ever tear down.
And what's so important to understand is that this wasn't about just clinging to some static, idealized past. As Darwish himself put it, I am not embarrassed about my identity because it is still in the process of being invented. For him, identity wasn't some relic you dust off. It was a living, breathing thing that his poetry was actively helping to create in the present.
And that leaves us with a final, really crucial question, not just about Darwish, but for all of us. In a world where history itself is contested, where memory is a battlefield, what is the role of the artist? Well, Darwish's life suggests one incredibly powerful answer: to build a home that no one can ever take away.